The grand chamber of the Galactic Council, aboard the star cruiser Apex, glittered with the reflections of 1,000 stars, visible through the transparent dome ceiling as the ship orbited the nebulous city of Orsoloth. Ambassador Jake Martinez shifted uncomfortably in his ceremonial suit, tugging at his collar. The temperature controls in the chamber seemed calibrated for species with entirely different thermal preferences. Too cold for some delegates, who huddled in thermal wraps, too warm for the crystalline beings who occasionally emitted cooling mists. Jake's gaze wandered across what resembled an intergalactic costume party. The reptilian council head with scales that shifted colors with each spoken word. A delegate composed entirely of interconnected crystal formations that chimed softly as they moved. A tentacled envoy from the oceanic worlds who floated in a hovering water tank. And even a sentient gas cloud contained within an ornate anti-gravity field generator. Ambassador Martinez. The council head's voice resonated, each syllable accompanied by a ripple of emerald across his scales. We appreciate Earth's petition for full galactic membership. However, certain protocols must be observed. Jake nodded, projecting a confidence he didn't feel. Of course, esteemed counselor, Earth is prepared to comply with all standard procedures. His mind, however, was racing with far less diplomatic thoughts. Is the room temperature dropping again? Did I remember to submit my expense report for this trip? My left shoelace feels looser than the right. Is that noticeable to anyone else? As you may be aware, continued the council head, telepathic assessment is standard for all species seeking membership. A wave of orange scales cascaded down his neck. We must ensure compatibility with our shared mental ecosystem. Jake swallowed hard. He'd been briefed on this possibility, but had hoped it wouldn't come up. Earth's psychic defenses were rudimentary at best. Humans weren't naturally telepathic, and the technology to shield thoughts was still experimental. For this purpose, the council head gestured with an elegant, taloned hand. We have summoned our most accomplished telepath, Investigator Vexthera. From the shadows at the edge of the chamber emerged a figure that caused Jake's breath to catch. Vexthera stood nearly 7 feet tall, with obsidian skin that absorbed light rather than reflected it. 4 arms emerged from a torso, wrapped in a silver-threaded robe that seemed to shift and move of its own accord. Her face was angular, with eyes that glowed a soft violet, and where hair might be on a human, a crown of gently undulating tendrils that sensed psychic emanations. Ambassador! Vexthera's voice was melodic, yet precise, like wind chimes made of surgical steel. I assure you this procedure is routine. I will simply touch your temple and assess your species' mental architecture. The process is painless. For you, maybe, Jake thought, then immediately worried whether she'd heard that. The corner of Vexthera's mouth twitched, a barely perceptible movement that confirmed Jake's fear. She'd caught that stray thought without even touching him. How much worse would it be with direct contact? Shall we proceed? Vexthera asked, already gliding toward him with practiced grace. Jake nodded, acutely aware of his racing heart, the dampness of his palms, and the sudden urge to recall the lyrics to that annoying commercial jingle that had been stuck in his head for 3 days. As Vexthera raised one of her 4 hands toward his temple, Jake's mind helplessly cataloged his immediate concerns. The air conditioning in my Earth Embassy apartment hasn't worked for 2 weeks. Did I turn off the coffee maker this morning? My tie is definitely crooked. The council head scales look like that holographic trading card I coveted as a kid. Vexthera's cool fingertips made contact with Jake's skin, and the real chaos began. Surface thoughts, she murmured, almost dismissively. Trivial concerns. I will need to probe deeper to assess true compatibility. Jake felt a gentle pressure, like a cool stream flowing through his consciousness. He tried to focus, to present only diplomatic thoughts worthy of Earth's representative. But his mind betrayed him. skipping wildly from one random concern to another. Did I lock my apartment? What if there's a fire while I'm gone? That breakfast burrito is giving me indigestion. Is the council head reptilian or amphibian? Would it be offensive to ask? My left foot is falling asleep. I forgot to call Mom on her birthday last week. Vexthera's brow furrowed. This was unusual. Not the content of the thoughts, which were indeed banal by galactic standards, but their pattern. Most species she'd mind-probed had organized thought structures, hierarchical for the hive minds, crystalline for the logical races, flowing for the aquatic species. But this human's thoughts, they moved in all directions simultaneously, like a neural fireworks display. She pushed deeper, past the surface anxieties, searching for the organized core that must exist somewhere. Instead, she found more layers, more threads, more contradictions. I should have been a teacher like Dad wanted. No. I love diplomacy. Do I, though? Yes. No. Maybe. I'm representing all of humanity, and I can't decide what to have for dinner tonight. What if I fail? What if I succeed? What does success even look like? Is a hot dog a sandwich? It can't be. But by definition, maybe it is. I should research this when I get back. Jake noticed Vexthera's composed expression beginning to crack. Her violet eyes widened, and her tendrils began to move more rapidly. Are you okay? He asked, genuinely concerned. Silence, she commanded, but her voice had lost its melodic quality. Your thoughts, there are too many simultaneous streams. Jake tried to apologize, but even that spawned new thought branches. Sorry. I know my mind is a mess. Everyone says that. My ex said I overthink everything. Was that why she left? No. It was the job, the constant travel. Speaking of which, I need to renew my parking permit at the Earth Embassy. Vexthera's grip on his temple tightened. She was a professional, the best in her field. She had read the minds of gas giants with 16 separate consciousness nodes. She had sifted through the psyches of hive minds with billions of connected individuals. This one human shouldn't be difficult. She isolated one thought stream, a memory of Jake as a child, forgetting to make a Mother's Day card until the last minute, the guilt of hastily drawing something while his mother was in the shower. But as Vexthera focused on this memory, 3 others demanded equal attention. Jake, wondering if his mother had ever noticed it was rushed. Jake comparing this diplomatic situation to that childhood pressure. Jake remembering the smell of his mother's perfume and wondering if she still wore the same brand. Unexpected psychic resonance bloomed between them. Vexthera found herself experiencing the guilt and nostalgia firsthand, emotions intertwining with memories of her own developmental cycle under the guidance of her spawning mentor. Your thought patterns are unusual, she managed, trying to maintain her professional detachment while sweat beaded on her obsidian skin. Jake, still unaware of the effect he was having, offered what he hoped was a reassuring smile. Do you need help? You don't look well. The genuine concern in his voice created yet another spiral of thoughts. Jake wondering if telepaths could get headaches, if he should call for medical assistance, if this would impact Earth's application, whether Vexthera had family who would worry about her, what species she was, whether that species had concept of family similar to humans. In Vexthera's quarters aboard the Apex, several meditation crystals suddenly shattered, responding to the psychic echo of her struggling control. The council members stirred, sensing something amiss. The crystalline delegate chimed in alarm. Investigator? The council head inquired, scales flashing concerned purple. Your assessment? Vexthera tried to respond, but Jake's mind had latched onto the hot dog sandwich debate again, generating a detailed taxonomy of food classifications, complete with visual imagery of various Earth foods, interspersed with memories of meals with loved ones, philosophical ponderings on the nature of categorization, and tangential thoughts about whether the council head would enjoy Earth cuisine. "I need to focus on one question," Vexthera gasped, speaking as much to herself as to Jake. "The hot dog sandwich question. Is it or isn't it? Let me isolate this stream." It was a mistake. The seemingly simple question had been debated across human civilization for centuries. Jake's mind contained arguments from both sides, personal opinions that had shifted over time, memories of heated discussions at dinner parties, and even a philosophical framework he'd developed specifically for this culinary conundrum. The telepathic equivalent of a dam breaking crashed through Vexthera's mental defenses. Jake's entire mental feed, every thought, memory, question, worry, hope, and contradiction, erupted not just into her mind but through her, across the entire council chamber. For one moment, every delegate experienced the full, unfiltered human consciousness. The council head found himself simultaneously worried about Earth's application, Jake's apartment's air conditioning, the hot dog classification system, Jake's mother's perfume, and whether his scales looked impressive enough for the ceremonial portrait scheduled next week. Vexthera screamed, a sound that began as a telepathic shriek and manifested physically, before collapsing to the floor, unconscious. Her silver robe twisted around her as if trying to shield her from further mental assault. Chaos erupted in the chamber, the crystalline being vibrated at an alarming frequency, nearly shattering. The gas cloud delegate expanded to 3 times its normal size, its containment field straining. The tentacled envoy's water tank roiled, as if in a violent storm. "Emergency protocol!" the council head bellowed, scales flashing crimson and white in alternating bands of panic. "Medical team to the chamber. Psychic dampening fields at maximum." Jake stood frozen, utterly confused. From his perspective, Vexthera had touched his temple, looked increasingly distressed, and then collapsed. He had no idea his mind had just been broadcast across the room like a psychic bomb. "What happened? Is she okay?" he asked, moving toward the fallen telepath before being intercepted by security officers. "Please remain still, Ambassador," one officer said, voice quavering slightly as residual human thought patterns still echoed in his mind. The council head, struggling to regain composure, made a swift decision. "Emergency session is now in order. Given the unexpected circumstances, I propose immediate approval of Earth's membership application under the Special Hazard Containment Clause." "Seconded," gasped the crystalline delegate, still ringing with distress. "Motion carries unanimously," declared the council head, without bothering to collect all votes. "Ambassador Martinez, Earth is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Council, effective immediately, under Special Protocol 7, Cognitive Hazard Containment." Jake blinked in surprise. "Thank you, esteemed council. Earth is honored to—" "Please," interrupted the council head, scales now a pale yellow of exhaustion. "No further communication until the psychic dampening field is recalibrated. Security will escort you back to the Earth Embassy." As Jake was led from the chamber, he looked back at the medical team tending to Vexthera. One of her 4 hands twitched rhythmically, as if still trying to process the cascade of thoughts she'd encountered. "Will she recover?" Jake asked his escort. The security officer, maintaining careful distance, replied, "Investigator Vexthera is resilient, but she may never be the same. No one has ever encountered a mind like yours before." Jake wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a warning. 3 months passed. Earth's integration into the galactic community proceeded with unprecedented speed. Though with unusual precautions, all human delegates were required to wear special dampening devices when in telepathic species presence. Earth's embassy was surrounded by psychic shielding, and special protocols were developed for cross-species communication. Jake had returned to Earth briefly for debriefing, hailed as the diplomat who had somehow secured membership in record time. No one quite understood how he'd done it, and the official Galactic Council report was classified, even from him. I just went in for the standard interview, he explained to his superiors at the Diplomatic Corps headquarters in Geneva. They asked some questions, did a telepathic scan, and then approved our application. His supervisor, Director Simmons, seemed skeptical. That's it? The same process that took the Centaurians 15 years? Jake shrugged. I guess humans are just more compatible than we thought. What Jake didn't know was that a new galactic memo had been circulated, classifying humans as Class 7 cognitive hazards, with the warning: human thought patterns exhibit dangerous nonlinearity and multiplicative complexity. Direct telepathic contact strongly discouraged. Meanwhile, aboard the Apex, Vexthera was undergoing intensive rehabilitation. The medical bay had become her home, its walls lined with psychic dampeners and neural stabilizers. The most accomplished telepathic healers had been brought in from across the galaxy, but progress was slow. How are you feeling today, investigator? Asked Dr. Nilani, her primary physician. Vexthera sat cross-legged on her medical platform, all four hands engaged in separate calming exercises. The intrusions are less frequent now, but I still find myself wondering about the strangest things. Such as? The doctor prompted, adjusting a neural monitor. This morning's nutrition supplement, Vexthera said with a frown. I spent 20 minutes debating whether it should be classified as a beverage or a soup. Dr. Nilani made a note. And did you reach a conclusion? That's just it, Vexthera said, frustration evident in her voice. I decided it depends on whether I drink it from the container or use an eating utensil. But then, I started questioning whether the utensil type matters, and whether temperature should be a factor in classification. And suddenly, I was creating a taxonomic system for all consumables aboard the Apex. The doctor nodded sympathetically. This was a common after effect. Exposure to human thought patterns had infected Vexthera with their propensity for overthinking and categorization spirals. I've never experienced anything like it, Vexthera continued, her tendrils waving agitatedly. In all my years as an investigator, I've touched minds from 1,000 worlds. There's always a pattern, always a structure. But humans, she shuddered. Their thoughts don't flow in any recognizable pattern. They think of everything simultaneously, contradictory concepts coexisting without resolving, emotional and logical processes completely intertwined rather than separated. The Council is very interested in your insights, Dr. Nilani said. You're the only telepath to have survived deep contact with a human mind. Vexthera's violet eyes darkened. Survived, yes, but changed. She held up one of her hands, which still occasionally twitched with an unconscious rhythm. I keep having these urges to check if I've turned off appliances I don't even own. Yesterday, I spent an hour composing a message to apologize to my spawning mentor for a minor offense from my youth cycle, something I hadn't thought about in decades. The doctor made another note. Human guilt patterns. Fascinating. Is it permanent? Vexthera asked quietly. Dr. Nilani hesitated. We don't know. No one has experienced this particular form of psychic contamination before, but we're developing new treatment protocols based on your case. What neither of them knew was that, across the galaxy, the Galactic Council had already begun establishing a new diplomatic framework specifically for human interaction, one that recognized that humanity's chaotic, non-linear thinking was not just a curiosity, but potentially a powerful asset in galactic affairs. Jake returned to Orsoloth 6 months after the incident. Now, as Earth's official ambassador to the Galactic Council, he stepped off the transport shuttle into the Earth Embassy, where his new office overlooked the swirling colors of the Nebula City. Welcome back, Ambassador Martinez, said his aide, Specialist Kim, handling him a data tablet. You have 17 urgent messages, 3 invitations to diplomatic functions, and a personal note from the council head. Thanks, Jake said, scanning the tablet while simultaneously wondering if he'd packed enough socks for this assignment, whether the air conditioning had been fixed, and if Earth coffee could be safely consumed by the crystalline delegates he was scheduled to meet tomorrow. He paused at the council head's message, surprised by its personal tone. Ambassador Martinez, the council welcomes your return to Orsoloth. Your unique contribution to our understanding of human cognition has been invaluable. I write to inform you that Investigator Vexthera has requested a meeting with you, should you be amenable. Standard psychic protocols will be observed. With highest regard, High Counselor Zethtal. Vexthera wants to meet with me, Jake murmured, a twinge of guilt surfacing. He still had no idea what had happened in that chamber, but he'd gathered that his mind had somehow harmed the telepath. The meeting was arranged for the following week in a specially prepared chamber at the medical facility. Jake arrived early, fidgeting with his psychic dampening device, a small silver disc attached to his temple. When Vexthera entered, Jake was shocked by the change in her. Her once imposing figure seemed smaller somehow, more contained. The silver robe had been replaced by simpler attire, and her tendrils moved with deliberate slowness, rather than their former fluid grace. Ambassador Martinez, she greeted him, keeping a careful distance. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Of course, Jake said, resisting the urge to offer a handshake, which he now knew would be both culturally inappropriate and potentially dangerous. I've been concerned about you. I'm so sorry for whatever happened during our session. Vexthera tilted her head, studying him with those violet eyes. You still don't know what occurred, do you? Jake shook his head. No one will tell me exactly. Just that there was some kind of incompatibility. A sound escaped Vexthera that Jake eventually recognized as laughter, something he'd never heard from her species before. Incompatibility, she repeated. That's one way to describe it. Ambassador, your mind broke every rule of telepathic contact that I've studied for over a century. I'm sorry, Jake said again, genuinely remorseful. No. Vexthera raised one hand. Don't apologize. You've taught us something invaluable about consciousness itself. She gestured to two seating platforms, and they both sat, maintaining the safety distance prescribed by the medical team. Humans are unique in our experience, Vexthera explained. All other known sentient species develop some form of mental organization, hierarchies, patterns, structures that allow thoughts to be processed in orderly sequence. But humans, she paused, searching for the right words. Humans think in chaos. Jake frowned. That doesn't sound like a compliment. It wasn't meant as either compliment or criticism, merely observation. Your species' minds function like quantum computers with no user interface. Multiple simultaneous processing streams, constant background operations, emotional subroutines interfacing directly with logical functions. It's beautiful, in its way, and completely overwhelming to telepathic contact. So that's why I collapsed the council meeting? Jake asked. Vexthera's tendrils curled slightly. You didn't just collapse the meeting, Ambassador. You temporarily imposed human thought patterns on everyone present. The council head spent 3 days wondering if his scales matched his ceremonial vestments and whether he'd left the atmospheric controls running in his private chambers. Despite himself, Jake laughed. That sounds awful. I'm genuinely sorry. It was educational, Vexthera said. I requested this meeting because I wanted to thank you. Thank me for nearly killing you. She shook her head. For showing me a new form of consciousness. I've spent my career believing that order and structure were the highest forms of mental evolution. You proved that chaos can be equally advanced, equally valid. Her hand twitched slightly. Though I must admit, I now spend an inordinate amount of time classifying my food and worrying about trivial past events. Jake smiled sympathetically. Welcome to being human adjacent. Can the doctors help? They're trying. But some of your thought patterns have permanently integrated with mine. I'm told I need to embrace the chaos, rather than fight it. Their conversation continued for an hour, carefully monitored by medical staff. Jake learned that his chaotic mind had inadvertently secured Earth's place in the galaxy, not despite but because of its unpredictability. The Council, it seemed, had decided that humanity's unique cognitive approach could be an asset in diplomatic situations where linear thinking had failed. "We have a saying on Earth," Jake told Vexthera as their meeting concluded. "Order from chaos." "We may need to reverse that for galactic diplomacy," Vexthera replied. "Sometimes we need chaos to break through too much order." As Jake prepared to leave, Vexthera hesitated, then asked, "One question has been bothering me since our contact, and I must know your final position on it." "Of course," Jake said, bracing for a profound philosophical inquiry. "Is a hot dog truly a sandwich?" she asked, with complete seriousness. Jake laughed, then saw she was entirely earnest. "Well, that depends on how you define a sandwich. If it's any filling between bread, then technically yes. But the bread in a hot dog isn't separated into two pieces. So maybe no. I tend to think it's its own category altogether." Vexthera's eyes widened in what looked like horror. "But that's not an answer. That's three different answers simultaneously." "Welcome to human thinking," Jake said with a grin. "We contain multitudes." A year passed. Earth's integration into galactic society proceeded with remarkable success, though not without complications. Human diplomats were now highly sought after for particularly difficult negotiations, their non-linear thinking breaking deadlocks that had persisted for centuries. Conversely, human diplomatic outposts required special accommodations for telepathic species, and a new field of psychic protection technology was booming. Jake had been promoted to senior ambassador, overseeing Earth's expanding diplomatic corps across 17 star systems. He'd returned to Orsoloth for the anniversary of Earth's admission to the Council, a celebration that still carried whispers of the infamous telepathic incident. The commemorative ceremony was held in a different chamber than the original encounter, one equipped with state-of-the-art psychic dampening fields. Jake noticed Vexthera among the attendees, standing with a delegation of telepathic species specialists. She looked stronger than when he'd last seen her, though one of her hands still occasionally twitched with that peculiar rhythm. After the formal proceedings, Jake navigated through the crowd toward her. "Investigator Vexthera," he greeted her with a small bow. "It's good to see you looking well." "Ambassador Martinez," she replied with a nod. "Congratulations on your promotion." "Thank you. And your recovery? The doctors said you were making excellent progress." Vexthera's tendrils moved in what Jake had learned was a gesture of qualified affirmation. "I've adapted. The human thought patterns never fully dissolved, but I've learned to integrate them. In fact, I've been reassigned." "Oh?" Jake raised an eyebrow. "Not interrogations anymore?" "No. I now head the newly formed Human Cognitive Research Division. We're studying how to safely harness human thought patterns for various applications." Jake wasn't sure whether to be flattered or concerned. "Applications? Nothing nefarious," Vexthera assured him. "But your species' ability to process multiple contradictory concepts simultaneously has proven useful in certain contexts. Quantum engineering, paradox navigation, diplomatic impasses." A server droid approached with refreshments. Jake selected what appeared to be a small pastry from the tray, while Vexthera abstained. "So," Jake said after sampling the surprisingly spicy morsel, "we went from potential galactic threat to valuable cognitive resource?" "Precisely," Vexthera said, "though you remain classified as a Class 7 cognitive hazard." Jake nearly choked on his pastry. "We're what?" Vexthera's expression shifted to one Jake couldn't quite interpret, perhaps amusement. "Did no one inform you? After our incident, humans were officially designated as cognitive hazards. It's actually a compliment, in a way. Only 5 other species in known space carry that designation." "And the others?" Jake asked, unsure if he wanted to know. All extinct, Vexthera said matter-of-factly. They collapsed under the weight of their own cognitive complexity. But we believe humans might avoid that fate, precisely because you don't seem to notice or mind the chaos of your own thoughts. Jake wasn't sure how to respond to that disturbing revelation. Before he could formulate a reply, the council head approached their small gathering. Scales shifting in a pattern Jake had learned indicated formal pleasure. Ambassador, investigator. The council head greeted them. A momentous anniversary. Who would have thought a year ago that our unfortunate incident would lead to such productive cooperation? Indeed, Jake managed, still processing the extinct species comment. Ambassador Martinez, the council head continued. Your presence is requested in the inner chamber. The Proxima delegation has reached an impasse in their treaty negotiations, and they specifically requested human cognitive assistance. Jake nodded. Of course. High Counselor. I'll head there immediately. He turned to Vexthera. It was good to see you again. Perhaps we can continue our conversation another time. I would like that, Vexthera said. As Jake turned to leave, she added, Ambassador, one more thing. Jake paused. I've been meaning to ask, Vexthera said, her violet eyes intent. Did you ever fix the air conditioning in your apartment? Jake laughed, surprised she remembered such a trivial detail from his chaotic thoughts. Yes, eventually, though now the water recycler makes strange noises at night. And did you call your mother? Jake's expression softened. I did. Thank you for reminding me, even if it was a year ago and somewhat traumatically delivered. As Jake headed toward the inner chamber, he reflected on the strange path that had led humanity to its current position in the galaxy. All their careful diplomatic preparations, the years of interspecies training, the meticulously crafted presentations of Earth's achievements, none of it had mattered in the end. What had secured their place among the stars was the very thing humans often considered a weakness: their messy, contradictory, chaotic minds. The diplomatic shuttle back to Earth departed a week later. As the nebulous city of Orsoloth receded through the viewport, Jake reviewed reports on his data tablet while simultaneously wondering if he'd packed his favorite sweater. Mentally composing a message to his sister, calculating the time difference between Orsoloth and Geneva, and debating whether the snack the flight attendant had offered was more properly a cookie or a cracker. His gaze drifted to the stars, and he smiled. Humanity had spent millennia trying to impose order on chaos, to make sense of their world and their minds. Who could have guessed that in the grand galactic community, it would be their chaos that made them special? Jake set down his tablet and accepted the offered snack, not bothering to categorize it. Next to him on the seat lay a small package, a parting gift from Vexthera. Inside was a neural stabilizer, a device designed to help telepaths process human thought patterns safely, and a note that simply read, "For the next time we speak, some chaos is worth the risk." As the shuttle entered faster than light travel, Jake's thoughts continued their familiar dance, jumping between diplomatic strategies, personal worries, random observations, and philosophical tangents. But now, instead of trying to focus on just one stream, he let them all flow together. A beautiful mess illuminated against the precise cosmic backdrop. In the galactic order of perfect, structured minds, humanity's gift was glorious disorder, and Jake wouldn't have it any other way.